Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Lesroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.
Good afternoon, and we welcome you to another edition of Working for You, the weekly radio program where the people of St. Kitts and Nevis can keep informed about what is happening in the government. I am your host, Lesroy Williams, and I welcome you wherever you are, whether you're here in St. Kitts and Nevis or you're somewhere in the diaspora. We thank you for joining us today. Today I have with me as my guest Mr. Osbert DeSuza, who is the permanent secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister and the person who is responsible for the S.T.E.P program. Mr. DeSuza, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams, and good afternoon to all the listeners, both at home and in the diaspora.
The government launched what you call the S.T.E.P, which is a reform of the People Employment Program, on its second anniversary, and that took place at the circus in Bastille. That was on the 16th of February. And the program has been transformed from what was the People Employment Program into what is now called S.T.E.P, which is the acronym for Skills Training Empowerment Program. Mr. DeSuza has been doing a lot of work in transforming the program and to bring it in line with the policies of the government of the day. And today we are going to have a discussion basically on that program and to discuss some of the reforms and what really is expected of people on the program. So Mr. DeSuza, I first will ask you, what really inspired the name change?
First of all, the program apparently started as an employment program. And as the nation is fully aware, the government is investing a substantial amount of monies into keeping this program going. And at the end of the day, there's not much to show for it. So the idea came about to reorient the program and have the funds invested in a skills training program.
Now, Mr. DeSuza, just to go back in time, the P.E.P program, or the People's Employment Program, the evidence would show that the minutes from the P.E.P, on the inauguration of the P.E.P, would show that it was intended to be a 6 months employment program. Now, 6 months has really become 4 years now, going on 5 years. And so the program as it was, the P.E.P program, which was supposed to be 6 months, went way beyond the time that was allocated for it. And so now the government of the day has the responsibility to see how best it can work with the program and with the people on the program. Now, I know that there has been a lot of reforms and so on going on with the program. Why is it important to have reform of this program?
Well, the country is fully aware, and I think we need to emphasize the point that when the P.E.P started, the intention was to have a mere 6 months of the program and then bring the program to an end. It seemed somewhere along the line to have been turned into some kind of political fiasco. this administration is trying its best to essentially move away from that. We started in June of 2016 when we realized that there were a number of irregularities, loopholes, and ghost workers who were involved in the maintenance of the physical environment both in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we went about dealing with that in a manner where we undertook a re-registration. Now I need to emphasize that you could not have just come to the P.E.P office and pick up a form and say that you re-register in. We have several field officers on the program, and the field officer who was involved in the re-registration would have had to come out into the field, meet you actually doing some work, get you to fill out a form, or assist you to fill out a form. And it is from the collection of those forms that we were able to deal with some of the ghost workers and bring to an end some of the irregularities with the program. I'm not saying that the program doesn't have any challenges, still the program does. Following that, to get to your question, we worked out from the S.T.E.P office that, it is advisable that now that we have been able to identify some of these persons, we can go back out and offer them one of 18 options. So we went back out with a list of 18 different training areas, and we asked them to indicate on the form which training area they would have been interested in receiving some training. Now, the government, I think that this is the way to go, so that we don't have these millions of dollars invested in the P.E.P every month, in the S.T.E.P, every month, and as I said earlier, there will be little to show for it. The nation is fully aware of what is happening on the Southeast Peninsula in relation to the fact, and it is a fact, that we have a number of non-nationals who come to St. Kitts to seek employment in areas that our locals can be employed in. And I think, as I've said from our several field meetings, that what some of these non-nationals have over us is that they are in a position to present a certificate in some kind of technical and vocational education training area, which is something that most of our nationals would not have been able to do. And when a hotelier comes to you and they make a request for skilled labor and you don't have it, you will have to resort to granting work permits. So what we are doing with the change of perception, the change of the name, the change in emphasis, is to provide a cadre of persons in this country who can take up some of the jobs that are going to become available on the peninsula.
Okay, now Mr. DeSuza, you mentioned a word there which, although I think I know what it means, I want you to explain to the people what it means. What is a ghost worker?
Well, ghost worker, and we found there were many of them, are persons who were being paid on the P.E.P then, who actually were not working. I venture to say there was one particular young man who had a sister on the program when she was residing and getting paid, let me emphasize that, when she resided in the United States and attending university. So all of those kind of things were able to eliminate.
So those were some of the irregularities. That were found on the program. Okay, now some people say that what is happening now is not a step up, but rather a step down. In other words, there are now less people on the program than before, and now people are really now called to to be disciplined and to exhibit some sort of work ethic and that sort of a thing. I do know that you have done some work in terms of preparing people for the new philosophy of the S.T.E.P. Could you expound on that?
Yeah, I don't agree with anyone who proposes that the change of name and the change of emphasis is a step down. What we have done on the program is that we recognize that there were a number of private institutions, and I'm going to speak to the numbers on the P.E.P in a short while, who were benefiting from the P.E.P program. In some cases, you had private institutions that had like 28 and 16 and 13 and 14 persons on the program. And when you speak to the managers, the owners of this institution, you were told upfront, I did not ask for them. So what we did back in 2015 into 2016, we undertook what is called the P.E.P initiative. We called in some of these persons and we asked them to partner with the government by trying to ease the fiscal burden that the government was undergoing. Back then, I hasten to say that the P.E.P was costing the government on average of $1 million on average. We have reduced that substantially, not by just sending home people, which we did not do, and I want to make that absolutely clear. At the end of the what we call the P.E.P initiative, we were able to get 100 and approximately 80 persons, but 180 persons who would have gone by the initiative from the P.E.P office to full-time employment in the private sector. In addition, a number of the institutions for which they would have worked for maybe 2 years, a year and a half, were in a position to give them a little more in terms of the wage than the minimum wage that they were working for under the program. In addition to that, some of the persons were able to access the startup capital from the development bank, and some of the persons had issues dealing with the level of discipline and order that we were trying to bring to the program by emphasizing that people need to work for the monies that the government is paying them. The Prime Minister speaks about this all the time. People need to go to work for the money that the government is paying them. So some of them voluntarily left. We were able by the P.E.P initiative to get 180 of the program by going to private employment, and I don't mean off by sending them home. They were able by our effort from the P.E.P office to move to employment in the private sector. And some persons, as I said before, were able to secure seed capital from the development bank and gone into their own private businesses.
Well, I think it's a good thing that some of the workers were absorbed into permanent jobs in the private sector. But at the very same time, there's a question that, is on my mind. And that is it really fair to just have the government footing a huge wage bill that the private sector is benefiting from? So the government is paying and businesses are benefiting at no cost to the business.
Well,
it's a question to me of justice, isn't it?
I think the response to that has to do with how the program was sold in the beginning and how the program was perceived back then.
Sure.
We had some 9 field meetings from the P.E.P office to the workers who maintain the physical environment. And at those meetings, we try to emphasize to them that we want to raise the bar on the program. We want to change the perception of the program. We do not want people to think anymore that you can just come off the road if you have a little business, go into the S.T.E.P office and expect the S.T.E.P to pay your wage bill. The idea of that is long past, and I want to emphasize that. If you are interested in some training area, you can link with the National Skills Training Program. They have their own training initiatives, or you can indicate some interest at the S.T.E.P office. We are trying our best to move away from people just coming to the S.T.E.P and say they want a job somewhere, somewhere. We want people to come to the S.T.E.P to say, listen, we are interested in some kind of training. We understand that you have changed your name and you have organized training program. I'm going to speak to the extent of the organization in a while, and I would like to be a part of that. The idea that so many persons in the private sector think that the government should foot their wage bill is something that is beyond me. As I said, maybe that is how the program was sold in the beginning. We knew that when it started as a political initiative, but we are making a concerted effort to get away from that. I feel that the government needs to lend support to certain sectors, and that is true. Everybody will appreciate that. But when people begin to take advantage of the that kind of offer, then it becomes a concern for reasonable and rational thinking citizens.
Sure. No, through my own observation as a citizen, I used to observe, for example, where I lived previously, I used to have about 30 persons who used to come across in the area periodically, and 30 people around a patch of bush. Now, I could never understand why it would take 30 persons to just cut down a small patch of grass. So obviously what you have is that you have a lot of them who are not doing anything. They're just there, they're observing and so on. Now, in terms of the work ethics, I mean, a fair day's pay. A fair day's pay for a fair day's work is really, and it's reasonable and an issue of justice. And I know that you have been doing a lot of work in terms of helping to orient people, give them a new orientation in terms of work ethics and standards. What are some of those things?
Just to give some background in relation to that, the S.T.E.P office conducted a series of meetings. They were held in Newtown, Keon, Molyneux, Sadlers, St. Paul, Sandy Point, and in West Bastia.
Right.
And the purpose of these meetings was to basically sensitize these workers who deal with the environment about the change from P.E.P to S.T.E.P. It was to try to impress upon them that we don't want you to be just out here cutting grass, chopping bush, but we want you to change your mindset and come around to the fact that it is possible under this program for you to receive some kind of formal, non-formal training. We also, during those series of meetings, dealt with the matter of perception, because I said to the persons who attended, and I should mention at one point we had 80 persons in Sadlers, we had about 75 in St. Paul's, that the general public will only change its perception of the program when the workers themselves begin to change their perception of the program.
Yes.
So any perception change has to come from them. I spoke to them about their dress code, about their conduct, about not attending work, not coming to work. I spoke to them about the relationship between them and the supervisor and them. I spoke to them about their general attitude towards the work, and I also indicated to them that as of that particular meeting that we had in all of these different communities, the hours under the program were changed. On Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, you're expected to work from 7 until 1 o'clock, and there's a break that they know of. On Fridays, you're expected to work from 7 until 11 o'clock. We are trying our best to enforce that. We have engaged additional field officers from the P.E.P office, and we brought in some additional supervisors. And the supervisors are fully aware of what we are trying to do. And we are getting some response. In some areas there are still some challenges that we have to deal with. But the public is aware that in a number of cases before, persons who were on the program at 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock, you cannot find them. And at the end of the week, they expect to be given a full week's pay. And that is something that, as I said before, reasonable and rational people would not accept. I made the comparison at every one of these meetings that more than half of the ladies on the industrial site sit on behind a machine at 7 and they leave at 4. And a lot of them work for minimum wage. And you cannot expect to go to work at 7 and by 8:30 you're back in your house, and then the government should compensate you. That is just not a fair thing, and is not a reasonable expectation of these persons of the country. I think people in Sinkers need to come around to understanding that they have an obligation to the country just like how the country has an obligation to them. You need to produce to advance your country, and in return, if you're working for government, you need to be adequately compensated.